Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Majlis and Markets with your host Hassan Jivraj. Majlis and Markets brings you thought-provoking conversations of influential leaders in Islamic and global markets. As usual, wherever you're listening to us, please remember to like, share and subscribe. It really does help us out. You can also send your feedback, comments, questions and suggestions to our email address hassan@majlisandmarkets.com. In today's episode, we're exploring Iraq's booming real estate market. Real estate is becoming a major sector in Iraq's economy. According to a report by Statista, a Germany-based market research and data company, it's the fourth largest among Arab countries and is expected to grow at a healthy rate of around 6% over the next few years. To help us understand these developments, we spoke with Mehdi Zwain, founder and managing director of Bayt al-Iraqi, a new Iraq-based prop-tech company. In our discussion, we explored the opportunities and challenges in Iraq's real estate sector, as well as the unique challenges facing a new generation of entrepreneurs. Mehdi Zwain, welcome to Majlis and Markets. Good to have you here.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Hassan.
Mehdi, you've got quite an interesting background. I came across you at an event we both attended a couple of weeks ago on tech in Iraq, and unfortunately we didn't obviously meet in person, but we have a lot of mutual connections in this space. But when I learned about your story and learned about what you're actually doing in the property space in Iraq and in the tech space in Iraq, I found it really interesting, and I really wanted to interview you and get to know you a little bit better.
Thank you so much.
Before we get into all of that, could you give us or give our listeners your early life and your story, basically?
Okay. So going back to the early years of my life, number one, our parents came in the 80s. So my parents was one of the first few that came from Iraq in the early 80s. And we migrated from Iraq early, and my father was the first person to establish an Iraqi Arabic school in London. It's called Al Huda and Noor schools. So we always had that connection to Iraq, and our parents always spoke about Iraq, and it was always every time Iraq was mentioned, it was a very emotional time for our parents. And like a part of it, the Arabic school was formed in order for us to have our connection. Because, for example, we were all in state schools or in private schools. So Saturday Arabic school was a very important thing for us. And then, I went into university. I studied psychology. I done mental health and psychological therapies for my master's. And then we started I became a director of a locum agency for GPs and nurses, which is still running till this very day. And now it's Bayt al-Iraqi.
Nice. So what made you want to go into psychology?
So what made me go into psychology is actually because it's the only subject I actually enjoyed in my academic life. So I tried all the rest of in A-levels. I tried the rest. I failed in a lot of them, but only psychology, I got really good at it. So when I went to university, I didn't mention that I got married young. I had children at the age of 20 and 21. I had two girls.
Mashallah.
And yeah, so by second year uni, I actually had two kids, and it wasn't easy, it wasn't hard, but because psychology was such an interesting topic, I actually got, I advanced on with it at the time. But unfortunately, I couldn't further. I actually furthered it in my master's, but I couldn't work in it because at the same time the recruitment agency opened, and we started the GP locum world, and it's a long it's a long world there. So we just continued that.
Yeah. And then how long were you doing that for?
Well, the recruitment or study?
Just recruitment or just after
So basically, I'm a director of a locum agency called Medoc Locums. We've been running for 14 years, and it's still continuing till this very day. So all the hospitals and surgeries all around nationwide in the UK, many of them we provide doctors and nurses for them. We're based in Harrow, so this was all. I was very settled in the UK. I was working continuously, with this agency, and everything was fine.
Yeah, and then I think at the event that we attended, shout out to Iraqi Innovators, and Zahra. Uh, you talked about your story, but before we get to like Beit al-Iraqi and what you're doing now, what
Yeah.
made you want to like go back to Iraq or well, go back to your country of origin?
Okay. So, as I said earlier, firstly, our parents really got us connected to Iraq. I told you, my dad was like the founder of the school or co-founder of the school for Arabic school. So we were always connected to Iraq. It was always part of us. We all grew up overseeing the war when it happened. In in 2020, during Corona times, my mum decided to move back to Iraq. Now, my father's passed away at 2001, so when I was 11 years old. And so my mother at 2020 decided to migrate back to Iraq. So in 2023, me and my wife and kids, well, we made the decision in February 2023. We decided by July, we're definitely going to migrate back to Iraq. The main reason was for my mom.
Right. And during this period up until 2023, I'm assuming you visited Iraq to visit family or to go.
Multiple times. So we were always connected to Iraq. So we would always go to Iraq, especially once my mom migrated to Iraq in 2020, we would go even more. So instead of, for example, 3 times a year, we'd go 6 times a year. So I would always go, and I know the challenges that Iraq has, and I understand there's a lot of difficulties at that moment of time. Even till this very day, there's a lot of difficulties at the moment. But we
Yeah.
understood the challenges. We understood that Iraq isn't easy. It's a different type of world there. And Yeah, so we would go a lot. And by the time we made the decision in February, 1st of July, which is when once we arrived in the airport, it was 55 degrees Celsius in the airport. But that's it. We made the decision and we stand by it. And I'm very grateful for the decision as well.
Yeah. And did you like before you permanently relocated there, did you like travel throughout Iraq or was there any specific regions you were going to?
So as per typical, when you live in UK, you have minimal days of leave,
Annual
which
leave.
you have to fit, especially as a family of five, you have to fit as many trips as possible for throughout the year. So it was really difficult to actually go around Iraq properly. So it was always mainly to Najaf, where my hometown is, and I would go around to, for example, Najaf, Karbala, Baghdad, but that's it. I never went to Basra. I never went to other places in Iraq. Well, until I lived there, but like previously, I never moved. I never went there. So it was all new to me. This whole experience was new to me. Number one, I like even in my younger years, I never migrated to another country to study. For example, some of my friends went to Algeria, some of my friends went to Jordan to study as like to work as maths and stuff like that. I didn't. I didn't even go out in uni. So even in my uni days, I didn't even go out to live. So this was my first time out of like my sort of territory and out there to like a new world.
Yeah, absolutely. Mehdi, before we get on to your
Yeah.
venture and like what you're doing in Iraq and your thoughts on the real estate market, I just want like, we've had a few guests on in the past, for example, Mohammed Khudairi and Matteo Motivani, who are very involved in the ecosystem in Iraq, the tech ecosystem. But from your perspective as an entrepreneur, starting, I would say you're still in your early days still of your journey. Um, and I think when we were talking offline, you just like recently started this venture. But before we talk about that, I
Yeah.
just want to get a perspective from you. Like why do you think people should consider Iraq, as a destination for investment and other activities?
So um So in technicality, there's a lot of reasons why, in terms of why people should invest in Iraq. I I I don't know if in the speech I did say that Iraq for me, in my eyes, and if I when I talk to like normal people about it that don't know about Iraq yet, they say this is like you're talking to me as if it's like Dubai 40 years ago. The reality, Iraq has much more potential than even Dubai, because Iraq has tourism, Iraq has oil, Iraq has, Iraq has got a culture, Iraq has got history, Iraq has got food. Everything Iraq has. There's a lot of reasons why Iraq is a very investable position. There's number two, Iraqi people. I know that this is like a bit funny, but Iraqi people, everyone likes them. I went to Saudi. When I tell them I'm Iraqi, they love it. They're like, "Oh, amazing! We love Iraqis." We go to, Oman, even Kuwait, even Iran, everyone. So Iraq, in terms, it's got in every aspect, it's a very investable situation. From tourism, from culture, from real estate, from in everything, literally everything. And I can explain why later on about why it's a very investable situation. But it's in a unique position at the moment that I don't think Iraq has been in this position like since 40 years ago till now.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say since probably 2017, 2018 is probably, or even 2019 is when things began slowly to improve politically, security wise, and obviously the high oil prices in the past couple of years, and the
Yeah.
new government in Iraq has, I think, also helped.
Yeah, yeah, because remember they've been on in wars from 1980, and technicality like even less than that, but they've been in wars from 1980 till 2020, literally. Because 2020 is when like end of 2019, 2020 is when they announced the end of ISIS in Iraq in terms of the war against ISIS. So they've been literally 40 years with like war. So Iraq is this year, so from 2022, because then they had COVID and the lockdowns and everything like that, and the markets died. So literally from 2021, you can say end of 2021 till 2023 is the first time Iraq's had some form of stability for nearly 40 years, 43 years. So it's in a very unique position at the moment.
Yeah, I would say it's very fertile and a lot of
Yeah.
opportunities there in different sectors, like you said. Mehdi, you've
But
set up
yeah,
this. One area I wanted to talk to you about was real estate, and
yeah,
you've set up this prop tech company,
yeah.
um, Bytes Iraqi. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about it, and then we can talk a little bit more about the real estate opportunities in Iraq.
Yeah. So Better Iraqi, can I not to bore you, but I'm actually going to explain the reason why I moved into Better Iraqi. So originally, when I decided to migrate in the 1st of July, I migrated only because my mom, and I decided that the situation in UK isn't improving, the high prices, LGBT, other matters that's happening in the UK at the moment, crime. There's a lot of reasons. So mainly it was for my mom, and partly it was for other reasons. So when I decided to migrate, my main intention to move to Iraq, the aim was to remote work for my locum agency, which I am till now. So till this very day, I continuously do it. The Better Iraqi started because I actually saw that there's a huge gap in the market at the moment where, people are looking to buy in Iraq, but they're looking for a trustable source. And at the moment in Iraq, the typical estate agency, there's very rare trustable sources for people to go and buy and, you know, uh, for such a situation. So when I moved in, I actually, my friends around me one day came over to my house in Najd. And so the idea still hasn't started. But what happened is that they saw that, this complex where you're living in Najaf, for example, is actually really, really nice. The roads are clean. The bins are picked up every day. The first thing I done when I moved in, I put solar panels on my house, so I've got 24-hour electricity. So then they realized, look, this is actually an investable situation. So they asked me at the time for the prices. I gave them the prices, and they bought. So a couple of them bought at that moment. So this was July last year. When I first moved, they came end of July, so they bought. Every property now that they've bought has gone up by nearly 60, 70,000 pounds. So they made profit. And I realized that this is a massive gap in the market. I can convince people. And in the end of the day, I'm working to bring people, investors and people into my own home, into Iraq instead of outside Iraq. So the reality is it was like a perfect situation to start with. And that's how it started. That's really how it started. Because when I bought for them, I got connected to my partner, who's now my partner for Better Iraqi. And that was the way it started for Better Iraqi.
And would you say Bytes Iraqi is like the Zoopla or Rightmove, or you're trying to make it like the Zoopla or Rightmove?
No, no. So we're not Rightmove or Zoopla. So Zoopla and Rightmove, there's already an app called Homely, which works in Iraq, and he was part of the people that spoke in the in the embassy a couple of weeks ago. what we try to aim to be is a bit like Foxtons, or Savile, for example, or any of these big agencies in the UK. So, Hassan, I'm just going to go through exactly what Bet Al Iraqi is so people understand what it is. So we started an agency exactly like Foxtons, for example. In Iraq at the moment, when people want to sell their house, they give it to the estate agent. In Iraq, there's only local estate agents. There's no one agency that takes all. So the
Right.
local estate agent, for example, he would not be very transparent about the price. There's no transparency with prices. And also they take buyer's fee and they take seller's fee and they take, from every aspect and non-transparent with the pricing. So for example, you want to sell your house, the agent gives him 700 million, for example, but then would sell it for 750 and cap the 50 for himself. Well, sorry, keep the 50 for himself. So I realized very like in terms of what we've grown in a mindset that we're very transparent. We've lived in the UK, everything is very transparent in front of us. So I decided, as an estate agency, we become very transparent. So we started originally as a website only and an office in Najaf. We started on the basis of a website only, listing the prices. I have contacts, and the person who partners me, was giving me properties that they own and as well as they know of, basically in complexes and other places. And so we started to list it properly on the website. So it was something new to Iraq because till this very day, it's very rare to find someone who lists prices and be very transparent and doesn't take buyer's fee. So we're moving into the market on that basis. We started off in Najaf, and just a couple of days ago, we actually signed the land for 15 years to build an office in Yarmouk, Four Roads, which is like considered to be like Mayfair in UK. Why? Because obviously everything can be done remotely, but Iraq is actually like face to face. They always ask, "Where is your office?" And they don't understand that. For example, we're working only from Najaf, but we can sell in Baghdad, we can sell in Basra. So they want no an office. Where is your office? So when you tell them, "Oh, okay, our office is in like Baghdad," then they'll be happy. Okay, they'll be like, "Okay, they'll come." They'll be more trusting. Yeah, it'll take time. I understand this because in the end of the day, it's sort of changing their behaviors to understand the typical agency, which is very acceptable worldwide, except Iraq. Iraq is in a unique situation where there's lack of transparency with prices and there's issues with estate agents, unlike, for example, the UK, which is much more straightforward.
Yeah. Tell me a bit about like how selling a property in Iraq, you touched it a little bit. Like, how does it work? So you approach, say, Ahmed, who's an estate agent, or is it like done on families? Or how does it work, really?
Yeah, so how it works is, so with Iraq, there's no one big agency. It's all localized agencies. A typical Ammu, and he's got his office, and you come into the office and you list it to him. He values it. There's no independent surveyor to value the property. For example, the estate agent, the local estate agent values it, and then he'll start selling it across. But I told you this whole procedure lacks transparency, and in the end of the day, we decided that this is because I see a massive fault line in this situation. I'm actually going to work to fight to off, to bring transparency into Iraq and bring trustability in this situation. Because when you're transparent, you're trustable. So again, these two things are lacking at the moment in the in the estate agency market in Iraq at the moment.
So how, for example, does property prices, how does the agent, how is it different? How is it done now? And
It's
you trying to disrupt
It's
that?
so in Iraq at the moment, it's totally non-independent. It's done by the agent. So you get a lot of difficulties. So right now, for me, for example, to value a house is very, very difficult at the moment. It's done by a local estate agent. They play with the prices of the areas. So they define what's expensive, what's not, what's thing. Let me just explain further about Iraq, because Iraq has got local estate agents, but then they also have marketing suites for these new complexes. And these new complexes some of them are phenomenal. And the marketing suites are very, very, like very, very good. Much better than, like, for example, UK marketing suites. But the thing, what we're establishing, and this is what I done for the first 6 months, I went to every single complex in Iraq including Bawabat Baghdad, including Amwaj, including every single complex. I came up with my idea. I told them this is what's going to be implemented. I'm doing it the European UK way. We've got because in Iraq you need connections and contacts to get things going. And I spoke to them, and they all agreed, and they were very happy with this new idea of transparency. And so, for example, as a UK buyer, you want to buy in Iraq, for example, instead of going on Facebook or WhatsApp to find the buyer's fee, to find what complex there is, you see so many, you don't know what's going on. You can come to me, for example, on our website, or I'll explain what happened then, but we will have everything listed in front of you, like something similar to the UK. And here, then you can define what's good for you, area do you want, what, everything like that.
Yeah. And
So that's that. But can
and
I explain about what happened in terms of the website and then the app, because it's something very interesting.
yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
So okay, so originally when we started, we we had the idea. So my partner is very involved in the Iraq market. He bought the red bricks into Iraq in the complexes. So previously, before it used to be the bricks were like from Iran, and it was substandard. So he went to Kurdistan and he actually got a contract from someone called Ashur Bricks and bought the red bricks into Iraq. So he's very, very experienced with complexes and dealing with Iraqis buying and selling. At the same time, I came in from, we've grown with the agency, the medical agency. So I've been 14 years in business. I understand what's going on. I've got large contacts with the community in UK, US, France, wherever you want. I know people there. So we decided to build up together and build better Iraqi. When we started, we done a website. Now, what you need to realize is Iraqis, 99% don't check websites. They don't. So we realized that's already a failed thing. They don't check websites. So what we then done, straight away, we moved into the Instagram world. So if you go into our Instagram now, you can actually see we're listing as if we're listing properties, but done on Instagram. And it's been phenomenal responses, because Iraqis are really, really into Instagram and Facebook. So if you check, the most searched page on Google is actually Facebook in Iraq. And Facebook is actually for the older generation, and Instagram is for the younger generation. But what we realized is that you get very expensive, like very rich people, very like the poor, the rich, the middle class are all on social media, and they're all very easy to attract. So we completely moved away from the website. So we still implement a website and we still list in it, but we completely moved away from the website and we moved into the social media world. And we were like, we made deals and we made contact and we're getting a name all based on Instagram and social media. But then after this, and I don't know, can I continue to explain what we're doing now?
Yeah. Go. Keep going. Yeah.
So then we realized, okay, Instagram is working, we're doing really well. Facebook is working, we're doing really well. But we realized one thing Iraqis excessively use as well. They use apps. And they use apps in a very important way, because at the end of the day, our main aim is to collect data and to understand data as well. So we are now developing the first AI inspired app in Iraq, which is for real estate. And where AI is going to come in, the person who's developing it, his name is Azuddin Al Hakim. He's based in UK here. Um, he works. He's head of AI in Samsung in the UK. But the thing about Aziz, unique about him, is that he's related to me. So he, in the first 4 months in Iraq, when I first migrated, he was with me. So in the formation of Better Iraqi being formed, he was with me and understood the whole concept. So he's forming the app now, knowing all what we need, because Iraq is very unique to what they need and how it's addressed, and it's very different to, for example, a UK. UK, if you go into like Savile search property, for example, it's very straightforward, very, very, very straightforward, very simple. Iraqis don't like simple. Iraqis like fancy. They like AI. They like these things. They like to have the more fancy you are and the more, not extreme, but more colorful, more everything is better. So we realize that, and we're working on that. So, hopefully, inshallah, when the app comes out, it'll be very nice and very different. And actually, we're going to be moving everyone from social media. Social media will become like more of a platform for advertisements, for stories and everything. We're actually going to move them all into the app.
And Mehdi, do you just cover like
Yes.
vanilla buying a property and selling properties, or do you do rentals as well?
No, so we do rentals. So obviously, it's been 6 months. So 6 months is very short time for a business. But we actually realized the buying market is something, but the same people that we buy and sell with offer us a rental market. So for example, Bawabat Baghdad, which is the main, like the best complex in Iraq for me, right in front of it's in the central Baghdad, the best location, 24-hour electricity, swimming pool, gym, everything you want is there. So now they've sort of, their first buildings have finished and they've sold out, and they're moving into. They've asked us, can you find us tenants for our rental department? And they're offering, they're starting from like $1,000 a month, which is considered for Iraqis as very expensive, because the rental market is much cheaper in Iraq than anywhere else in the world at the moment. Well, I don't know about anywhere else, but definitely not like the UK. Is very cheap.
Yeah. Speaking about the real estate markets in Iraq, Mehdi, I came across some research
Mm.
yesterday about the potential of the Iraq's real estate market, and it was really interesting that, obviously they put UAE, Dubai as number one, and then they put Saudi there as well. These are like really well known. And I think Egypt was up there as well. And then interestingly, number four was Iraq in terms of opportunities, both
Yeah,
from, the constructing side or the building side, the supply side, and also the investing side. Like when we look
yeah.
at real estate in Iraq. What are your thoughts? And like, could you walk us through some of the opportunities that are taking place there?
So Hassan, in terms of real estate generally, it's a very profitable business at the moment, in terms of like for someone buying a house at the moment there, just a simple buying house. So as I mentioned, my friends that bought, but I'm actually doing a market research which will come out soon, which will show every single person that bought since I bought, they bought with me till now. Every single property has risen in prices, up to 100 million within 6 months. So the highest has been 100 million. 100 million is around £60,000. That's astronomical for anywhere in the world at this moment of time, and with the current markets and everything. So reality is that just buying a house or buying a property or stepping into the ladder in Iraq is good enough. You don't even need more than that. That's especially for the Iraqis that are moving there. But in terms of actual investment opportunities, there's huge amounts of investment opportunities at the moment. I've spoken to people and I've told them, in Iraq, when you live in Iraq, you feel like you're in the 80s of the UK. There is so much opportunities to bring into Iraq, as if there's another 40 years of progress to be done there. You have tuition centers, for example, international standard tuition centers, not done in Iraq. Holiday homes, not done in Iraq. Um, Serviced apartments, not done in Iraq. Up, so, for example, Airbnb, not bought into Iraq. So many opportunities to be bought into Iraq, still hasn't come into Iraq yet. So there's loads of opportunities. I told you, like, if you can literally go around and you can start up anything, potentially being a very successful venture. But you have to understand the market. You have to understand the situation. I know it's not easy. Iraqis down there are not easy to deal with, but they're slowly learning, and they're slowly. What I realized over this 1 year is that they are starting to accept newer ideologies and newer. So when like for example, mentioned the fact that we're not taking buyer's fee and we're being transparent pricing, and we're going to do it tech based, and our office is not based in Baghdad, for example, it was based in Najaf at the time, and I'm talking to people in Basra or Baghdad or like Nasiriyah. They're more accepting to such situations than before. They're more accepting to me, and in the end of the day, I'm a foreigner for them, because I'm born and bred in UK and I've lived all my life in UK, and in the end of the day, I've been for 35 years in UK. I only migrated to Iraq 1 year. So they consider me to be a gharib still. But even with that, they're still very accepting with the new ideologies and new way of working. They're more acceptable than before. Well, that's what I think. Yani, especially with Betul Iraqi, they're being very accepting with such a situation. And I genuinely believe with people coming from the West, if they give them new ideas, forget food and drinks, but like the new ideas, like robotic thinking for kids, or for example like tuition centers, or for example there's so much opportunities in that aspect. Yeah, is like it's ready for movement. Can I also add one more thing, Hassan?
Yeah, go for it.
Just about education part, you'd be unbelievably shocked of how much they care about education there. A very quick story. I don't want to take too much of your time. Very quick story is that, me, if you know me and my friends, they know me. I'm not lax with my kids about education. I'm actually caring about education. But say sometimes, my son didn't want to go to school. For me, it's fine. I won't take him to school. I'll let him sit down at home, relax. But my mom, my driver, who is like who's very close to me, like he's like the taxi of the community in our area, in our complex, and I take him around as much as possible when I need to. If his son misses 1 day of school, he goes mental, like it's as if he's missed like the final exam. So I asked him once, I was like, why do you care so much about education? And Salah, for example, he doesn't even read or write. So I asked him, why do you care about education so much? He's like, because we've been for 40 years, we're just tired of just wars and instability and lack of education. We actually don't want our kids to go through the same thing. So they're actually now, why I was mentioning about, why I mentioned this is because they're very excited about the new era that's going to come, and they want their kids to be educated. They want to move away from the wars and battles and lack of education and things like that. And Iraq has huge potential for that because Iraqis in general are very, very smart people. And they're very, if you see in the UK, for example, a lot of doctors Iraqis, a lot of tech people Iraqis, and so they're very in the market and they know everything. So they just need time to learn educate. They're very, very, very caring about education at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I can attest to that as well. Um,
Mm.
Based on my experience with Iraqis. One thing I wanted to ask you, Mehdi, was that Iraq's getting a lot of also attention from some of the Gulf real estate developers like Amar and Damak from Dubai and other ones. Like, how important is the involvement of these kind of players in Iraq's real estate market?
So I think over the course of time, they'll move in very strong to Iraq. I don't know. I did mention this in the speech that the two biggest hospitals in Karbala and Nasiriyah have been taken over by Qataris. Um, the Emiratis are moving in near Karbala airport. They're buying all forms of land. You've got the Saudis moving in slowly, slowly. And in the end of the day, whatever works in the Gulf will work in Iraq. If you go to Basra now, most of the Kuwaitis, for example, they come to Basra, spend the day, and then they go back because they're they're like the Basrawis are very welcoming to the Gulf, as it's very close by as well. And the more Iraq will develop, the more the Gulf will come in because anything that works in the Gulf will move into Iraq. That's one. Number two, a lot of people are waiting to see if the foreign investors will move in. So just a couple of things. One, Rixos in Baghdad is opening up. I am 100% sure if Rixos works, then you'll get all the massive hotel industry moving into Iraq and making it work as well. And then you have, for example, the hospital sector. So the hospital sector, again, if they take over in Karbala Nasiriyah and it becomes a success, 6 months down the line, they'll take over other hospitals and move into that. And because it's possible that will happen. So there is the Gulf investors are moving in. Remember, a lot of Iraqis previously they used to take their money out to the Gulf to invest. So they actually now know they're keeping their money in Iraq and investing in Iraq itself. Why would they take their money out? There's already a struggle for taking out the money, anyways. And then why would they take out the money and invest in the Gulf when they can invest in Iraq? Separately, you mentioned Damak. So about Damak, for example, we so with our agency, we're called Better Iraqi. We're based in Iraq and we work for Iraqis, especially foreigners buying in Iraq and investors. But at the same time, I partnered up with Damak Dubai and Iraq basically because they've got a place in Baghdad, and we're actually set up as an agency with them. And also an Emirati company called Silvana in Turkey and Winkworth in London. So the idea is that what I'm trying to, the person who wants to invest outside, like inside Iraq, to the outside world, will help them as well. We'll show them the options of where they can invest in a proper way, where they'll see all the markets in front of them and give them the expertise that that we've established on this period of time to help them. So Damak Dubai, Silvana, there's one called Wujha in Oman and Winkworth in London. That's the idea.
Nice, nice. Mehdi,
Because
yeah, go.
Hassan, sorry, like the thing is about Iraq is that what we've realized over this course of time is that they are very rich. They have a lot of money. They're very cash rich. They have a lot of money, and they don't have much to invest in. So they don't have hedge fund managers. They don't have ISA accounts. They don't even have bank accounts. Their money is either put into property or gold at this moment of time, or a car. They don't have many more options other than that to put their finances in. So you realize over the course of time, they're actually much more cash rich than me and you put together, for example, because the reality is that they have money, but they don't have like saving account, they don't have ISAs, they don't have Bitcoin, they don't have hedge funds and stuff like that.
Mm. Uh, Mehdi, one thing I wanted to talk to you about was, well, maybe we can talk about the tech stuff in a bit, but some of the challenges in Iraq. You relocated there recently, set up Beit al-Iraqi. Um, there's obviously a lot of challenges in doing business in Iraq, whether you're a tech company or a normal company. What are some of the challenges
Yeah.
that you faced personally in doing business in Iraq?
So in terms of Iraq, at this moment of time, realistically, it's still a lawless state in terms of, yes, laws are being implemented, but there's still a lot of challenges for actual implementation of law. I don't know if you've heard in Baghdad now, for example, 3 months ago, they started to introduce cameras and they realized as soon as they introduced cameras in traffic started to stop, but people started to stop in traffic lights, for example, because they're scared of the fines that they were going to get. So implementation of law is going to take time for it to be done properly. But at this moment of time, it's still needing a lot of time. It still needs a couple of years until proper implementation of law will happen. And I think that's the biggest struggle in Iraq as a business at this moment of time. Um, that's one of the things. The other thing I told you about is, Iraqis are really used to face-to-face contacts. They don't have something called remote. They don't have something called on the phone. They want you. Where is your office? Let's come and meet. So how much we've been trying to move people away from that aspect because in the end, opening offices isn't a very simple situation because you need your staff to be well organized and know what's happening. You can't just train anyone into this matter. So what I started to realize is that I would be one day in Baghdad, then one day in Basra, then Nasiriyah, then this, then that, because they don't get or phone calls or anything. They want face-to-face meetings. They love face-to-face meetings. They love the cozy, the cafe, the relaxation, the meetups. They love that. In itself is nice because you get to know people personally, but in itself is a struggle because you have to move around in different cities and with the cars nowadays, like I think the roads are not clean and everything. It's not like you're driving on the UK motorway. You're driving in Iraq motorway isn't the most helpful thing. So I actually realized that's one of the main struggles that I had in Iraq is actually the face-to-face situation. But there are a lot. Look, the thing is, I've told my friends a lot because a lot of people ask me all the time, what do you think, Mehdi? Why did you survive Iraq? And why did many, not even think about Iraq? I told them, in my personal opinion, is that when me and my wife decided we moved to Iraq, there was nothing that was going to stop me coming back to UK again, because I've decided that my intention was to go next to my mum, so I wasn't planning to go back. So we went in a very positive way. So I don't see things negative there. So maybe there are people that are going to come and see negative situations, but I see Iraq in a very positive way. I saw mine in a very positive way, and I think even at work, this moment of time, if we do get certain struggles, and like for example, we get like we list a house and then someone goes direct to them and they take that, like they don't want to go through us, and we find that as a struggle. We just take it on board, we learn from our experiences and we move on. We learn that, it'll take time. It's not easy and it's not as straightforward as UK business, for example.
Yeah, I was going to ask you on specifically on the real estate industry in Iraq. I can imagine it's the legal infrastructure is not as developed as the UK, right? It's quite unregulated.
Mm, yeah. It's so it is unregulated. That's the problem. So I don't know if even in a bad way or a good way. You were saying that they're the fourth um, best growth in terms of real estate in Iraq. I actually believe it's much more than that. I actually, because deals that happen in Iraq, they go through several estate agents before they reach the land registry. So in fact, they don't get sold once; they get sold like 4 or 5 times till they reach the land registry. While in UK, for example, no, everything is registered, and so that in itself is a bad thing and a good thing. Bad thing is that some deals get unregulated. There are a lot of issues where people buy land, and then it turns out that that land is being bought by another person, and there's these type of struggles. Um, the way we're trying to implement things in Bet Al Araqi, and inshallah, over the course of time, I actually believe that I will change the whole market myself. Every single property that will get listed through us, we actually take the Senate. So the Senate is basically like the land registry owner, where you take the actual ownership of who is it, and we want to speak to that name. Once they verify them and that they're happy to sell, then we sell it. Or else I wouldn't accept any typical property to be sold. So unless they give us that ownership. So we are working in terms of sorting these situations out. But yeah, it's a very big unregulated market. There's a lot of lack of transparency. Estate agents have their reputation in the Iraqi community is 99.9% considered to be fraudulent people, and they're hated. So we're trying to change that from that aspect. And I think over the course of time, inshallah, with our app, with our Instagram, with our thing, we'll actually change these. And not only change this market, will actually change the whole Iraq market. I genuinely believe that can happen, because I'm not fighting estate agents. I'm actually telling estate agents, look, I've got properties. I can sell it with you. We can take a share of the cut, for example, but I don't want you to go then and make, be less transparent and stuff like that. So it's worked. Estate agents, instead of fighting me, they've actually been very supportive, and they've actually tried to work with me. And I've tried to work with them. So I've tried to, I'm trying to incorporate a whole system into Iraq.
Yeah, I was just it was interesting thinking about that. Like they wouldn't see you as a because I think you're trying to position yourself as a disruptor, right? In the current market infrastructure, you want to disrupt how
Yeah.
the market is done.
I do. I want to disrupt it, but I'm doing it in a way where I actually want to bring the local estate agents with me, in terms of I actually work with them. So, say for example, I've got a property to be sold, and say I don't know that market really well. Even so, I've tried to advertise, it doesn't work and everything. I'll go to the local estate agent. I tell them, look, my share, for example, is 1%, um, and I'm happy to do 50-50 as long as you can sell it with me. What that makes him happen is that previously he would have 1% sell and then 1% from the buyer, and he'd be lack of transparent from the actual share, the actual listing. So now that the price is in front of them, all he'll do is split with me the 50-50, and in the end of the day, he'll get the profit. I mean, he'll get the money, maybe not as much money as before, but he'll still get a good amount. And at the same time, we sell, and it becomes more internationally standard, the property listing and the property market. And once we establish ourselves, and I think over the course of time we will establish ourselves, we'll try to change the whole market. And we'll get more people competing against us, because I'm sure over the course of time, when people see it as a successful thing, they'll do the same and they'll start moving on and doing something similar.
There's a couple of areas I wanted to ask you about more broadly. I think you mentioned this in your speech, or maybe somebody else did, was talking about the banking sector in Iraq. Obviously, it's not as developed as the UK, and there's a lot of challenges with the banks. How difficult is it to do banking transactions in Iraq?
Very difficult. But it's progressing. So with Iraq at the moment, in terms of local banks, there's a lot of local banks that are, like the salaries, for example, they've moved them all into local banks. So no one gets cash anymore for their salaries. Everything is given, they've given like a Visa card and they can use them. But that Visa card, they can't use it outside Iraq, for example. It's only inside Iraq that they can use. In terms of debt finance, which a lot of people ask about, do banks supply it and no, and for properties and businesses, generally it's not an easy thing, and which isn't a good thing because I don't want them to actually debt finance as much as possible. But they do offer, especially with complexes, they do offer sometimes they do offer them um, finance for from actual salaries. So say your salary, you're a موظف in the حكومة, you can from your salary you can take out a loan, which will then pay for the house, but not fully. So say like for example the house is 200 million, 100 million is supported and 100 million is not supported.
Right. And
So the
yeah,
way the way it goes with real estate, especially with complexes, the complexes have two ways into it. Either they do their self-owned finance, but interest-free, where they do, for example, payment plans. You within 5 years you pay off everything, or within 10 years you pay off everything. Or you have like in terms of I told you only Iraqis and only governmental people, only people that work in the government spaces and hospitals and stuff like that. They have a their own um, they have their own sort of financing
and
called Mubada.
does Iraq have like is it like owning a property? Is it like, do they have like a developed mortgage? Well, I guess they don't really have a developed mortgage market. How does property ownership work?
So property ownership works on you get actual you get an actual land registry certificate that you own that property.
But it's not
So
like getting money
there's
from the
obviously
bank,
different ones.
when the bank purchases the property and then you have to start paying them, or is it done on a Sharia compliant basis? How does it work?
No, no. So they don't have the bank owns the property. They don't have like UK style. So the only debt finance that they provided in Iraq was so that the complexes were aided. So the only thing is that they give you a loan to you, not the
To borrow.
thing
Okay.
to
Yeah.
borrow, and they take it out of your salary directly.
Right.
So you don't go to the bank and pay it off, for example. No, it comes out straight from your salary.
Right. So is there interest involved, or is no interest?
No, no, there could be like very, very small interest rates, but it's nearly interest free. It's designed for people to support complexes to sell. This was previously. So can I explain this part? I know
Yeah,
I've tied you out of this.
please explain. Yeah, yeah.
So what happened in 2003 to 2020? Iraq was working on the basis of like in the real estate. I mean, it was all local based. You buy, you sell, you buy, you sell, and it's normal. In 2020, Iraq decided to not let currency move out of Iraq. So they started to keep Iraq money into Iraq. They won't let people just easily take out. Not like before. Before it used to be very simple. So once they done that, and a lot of so I don't know if it's the right thing to say, but a lot of corrupted money, a lot of normal money, a lot of whitewashing went into Iraq, inside Iraq. But what that helped though is that it made complexes um, become from typical, low standard to actually now very high standard complexes livable for international people. So, for example, Bawabed Baghdad, which I'm talking about, or even my complex, is nicer than many areas in the UK, and much more developed. Smart home technology, um, swimming pool, gym, sauna, it has the whole thing. It has an English school called Cadillac, for example. They have, and that English school's got pony riding and play areas and swimming and everything. So did that change the complex of Iraq within the 3 years, since 2020 to 2023? That it made a massive difference in the complex world. So now, actually, these places are actually internationally acceptable, all because of what happened. Instead of they let money out of Iraq, they kept the money into Iraq, and that forced them to actually do this.
Right. And Mehdi,
Yeah.
another question I had, a broad question on the economy was, I think in 2021 the Iraqi dinar was devalued, and last year the
Yes.
Central Bank of Iraq announced that I don't know like how this has been going, but they announced all internal transactions would be dealt in non or would or US dollar transactions wouldn't be allowed inside Iraq.
Yeah.
How has that impacted your business?
So, look, it doesn't make a difference for us because at the end of the day, so I was actually warned that I'm not allowed to list any property by dollars because they go mental on such a situation. Um, you cannot, you can't mention the dollar, and the dollar so Iraq has capped the dollar to the dinar at 1.32. So even properties that were listed, like complexes that were listed in dollar previously, what they've done, they've forced them to change it to dinar. So no one's allowed to list in dollar anymore. But has it impacted? I told you it hasn't impacted. In fact, it's made it better because what happened is that previously people used to take out money to outside Iraq. So when they done that in 2021, it forced money into Iraq, which aided the complexes and aided the Iraq society. So in fact, it actually bettered the thing because at the end of the day, now people have kept the money in Iraq and it has helped it. But there's always an issue with the dinar because there's always going to be this feeling of you never know what's going to happen next in terms of pricing. Obviously, there is black market dollar. So, for example, the central bank have the dinar to dollar at 1.32, but for example, now the dollar really is like 1.5. So again, it plays a big part of a thing. But in terms of listing and in terms of everything else, and in terms of dealing with people, you can't mention the dollar or you can't even deal with the dollar. It's all done through the dinar.
And I think, as you mentioned, and you've mentioned previously, right, is that Iraq is like to hedge against this devaluation or the continuing devaluation of the dinar. They put it into things like property and gold, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that's the thing, and they're all cash rich, so they don't have money in banks. They don't. Well, they may do the higher tier may do. They may have money in their banks, but they don't. They tend to not trust the banks. They tend to trust owning something more than the banks, and that's what they do. They tend to keep the money. What you need to realize is Iraq is also mainly are all freeholders. They own their properties, so they're happy for generations to live together. So in order for them not to debt finance and not to, for example, use loans and use everything. Funny story I tell people is that Iraqis in Iraq, in Najaf, for example, if they rent, people actually like do dua for them and do prayer for them and say, oh, Ya Allah, let these people, survive the rental and let them buy. Because that's how much rent is looked frowned upon in Iraq. It's all bought. Everything is freehold. Everything is in. So it's like I laugh at them because I tell them in London, all of us are either rent or mortgage anyway. So it's like we're all suffering anyways compared to what they're going through. So I actually think they're much better off in that aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just
Mm.
looking at other challenges, Mehdi, more broadly economically, do you think Iraq, obviously oil prices are quite high at the moment. I think they're 80 or somewhere around the $80 a barrel. So Iraq's coffers are doing okay. But like I think I remember in 2020 when oil prices were depressed, Iraq was in a lot of fiscal trouble, right? They were almost insolvent from what I was reading at the time.
Yeah, I think Iraq will obviously um, will always depend on the oil because they have to. But one thing Iraq has very unique compared to, for example, the Gulf. Iraq alone, in the next 3 months, they're going to be expecting over 30 million visitors for Karbala because of the pilgrimage. So the reality is Iraq is automatically one step ahead in tourism in terms of that. They can, if they want to, And inshallah, and I'm hoping with foreign investors, and hopefully when the Iraqis in the West decide to move back to Iraq and start to bring their ideas over, is the tourism aspect of Iraq is phenomenal. So I told you, Karbala in its own has religious tourism unheard of. To get 30 million visitors, all from throughout the world, to come to one position, and that not being like done in the like invested in the right way. There's a lot of huge potential for foreign investors in that aspect. Then you've got in Nasiriyah, you've got Ur, the oldest arch in the world, and one of the, for the Christians, the oldest church in the world, or one of the oldest church in the world. It's like 6,000 years ago. And then you've got, for example, the marshes, and then you've got Basra, and then you got Shat al-Arab, then you got the in Najaf, you got Najaf. There's a lot of religious shrines, and the actual establishment is then you got Baghdad, all forms of sect and all forms of religious tourism. And then you've got cultural tourism, and then you've got travel tourism, and then you've got like everything. Iraq has literally everything. It's funny. But what I think will happen over the once we start all going back to Iraq, and that I'm starting to have the reality, because people are getting fed up of the UK and getting fed up of the West and all these LGBT things and everything like that. So they actually, the more of us go back, the more we'll start to bring our ideas hopefully together. And I don't always say our ideas only work, because I actually believe there are a lot of things to take from Iraqis themselves. Iraqis are very generous people. Iraqis are very kind, and they're very, if you have a situation where you need help, they'll be the first people to come to you. So reality is that there's a lot that we can intertwine together to make it a very successful country, and that will help taking oil dependence out of it. So yes, I understand it will always be oil dependent, but I do believe travel tourism plays a huge part in Iraq. Also, you got the food. Also, you've got the thing. There's a lot to play with, like to like discuss, and I think it'll be a massive part. And that's separate to in like over the course of time. Other industries would come in and try to improve Iraq and everything. Oh, I forgot about Babel. Babel is the Babylonian gardens and the thing. Again, when you go now, you're the only visitor going there. But imagine how much potential you got. I tell people here is that the Stonehenge, for example, 8 rocks, and you get millions of visitors yearly. And Babylon Gardens and Babylon and Babel and Nasiriyah and Ur and these places are literally, when you go, you visit alone, there's no one there. But reality, how much potential do you have is crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Iraq's got a lot of potential. And I think also the change that the government made recently about getting visas on arrival and make it easier for
Yeah,
foreigners has helped
yeah,
prompt. You're seeing a lot of like YouTubers and travel vloggers coming to Iraq and showing the country in a more positive light. Um,
yeah.
Mehdi, as we bring the podcast to a close shortly, there's one thing I wanted to ask you, or to ask you as an entrepreneur. You've been doing this for a short time, and like I mentioned before, we had Matteo Montevani and Mohammed Khoudary on previously, and I've talked to entrepreneurs and other people in the Iraq tech ecosystem. Talk to me about like how's it been as an entrepreneur in the tech space in Iraq? Like, what kind of support have you received? What kind of have there been any kind of like collaborations you've done, and have you met other stakeholders in the industry?
So with Iraq, I don't know, like I did mention this earlier. Number one, Iraq at this moment of time, they're very open to ideas, and they're very open, especially when it comes to the tech industry. And they're very excited about the coming period. And what you realize is that, in fact, Iraqis use it a lot, much more than like much. I don't know about the UK, but much more than anywhere else that I've seen. They use social media a lot. They use apps a lot. They're interested in tech a lot, and they're interested in new ideas. So, in fact, who I've spoken to and who I've been talking to about Better Iraqi and the idea of an AI app and everything, they've been very welcoming, and they've been very excited, and they're trying to help. It's not like, for example, they'll try to battle you and fight you and everything. In fact, especially with the entrepreneurs and business ideas and tech, they're very, very open to these ideas at this moment of time, and very excited because they realize the success of the Gulf, for example, and the success of the world at the moment has been through that way, and they want to go through that way as well. They want to be like the Gulf, and they want to be like anywhere else in the world, and that's what they're aiming for. So I actually see, me personally, I think I see it as a positive way. I see that there's a lot of um there's a lot of excitement in Iraq at this moment of time. I know people think I'm crazy. I genuinely believe it. I genuinely believe, because how it works is that I started to meet people face to face. Previously, in my work in recruitment, it was all done remotely on the phone. I hardly meet people. So I meet within our community. I have, I've been doing like community-based work and everything, but I never used to meet other people outside my bubble for face to face. So in Iraq, when I started to meet people face to face, I meet like big developers based in Basra, based in Nasiriyah, based in Kut, based in Najaf, Karbala, Baghdad. You realize that they're all open to such ideas and they're all excited. So they're happy for tech to come into Iraq. They're happy for developers to come into Iraq. They're open to these ideas. But did I get funding, for example, from like, a tech startup? No, because to be honest, I didn't approach. Maybe there is such situations. And I think there's like a name, there are like tech investor startups where they help people and everything, but I haven't gone through that approach. But I know that's what I'm saying. That it's positive. Like there's a very positive light in all this, and I tell people as well. One thing unique about Iraq is that these face-to-face meetings, how tiring they can be and how of a struggle, but it's very dynamic. Is that you actually sit with the person who is a judgment maker of your next move. So imagine if you convince him, that's it, it's done. You move on. While in UK, for example, it takes you a year to reach that same person that you're talking to in Iraq, which can happen within a day. But it's exciting, and I think I told you, inshallah, over the course of time, I'll be one of the people that will support new businesses and new investors. And there's many investment opportunities that in my app there will be proposals which will be done. For example, the Karbala Service Department project, the thing where there'll be co-investors, co-investing in like crowdfunding basically in investments in Iraq, and potentially, inshallah, over the course of time foreign investors will like start moving into Iraq, and it'll work. I think it'll work. I think Iraq is in a very exciting period at this moment of time, and if you stay positive and make it positive, it'll become a positive experience for people.
Inshallah. Mahdi,
Inshallah.
tell us more about your future projects and where you want to take Bayt al-Iraqi.
So yeah, so the reality is, I told you we started in Najaf, but we realized Najaf is a very unique situation where it's like a village basically. Your main office is in a village. So then we luckily had a deal here. The person owns it in UK basically, but like is in Iraq. In Yarmouk are four roads, which is a very important road to have our central office in. Why people like face-to-face meetings, and they always ask you where is your central office. So that's going to be that. But the reality is, in the tech industry, I told you we're doing an AI app. And within the app, we're also going to have an investment portfolio. So, for example, people that want to invest in Iraq but are slightly reluctant to do massive investments in Iraq, there'll be investment portfolios for service departments, for holiday homes, and there are a couple of ideas that are being established, because we now have established not only we um, not only we um, not only we buy and sell houses, we actually build houses, we build developments, we sort everything out. And I've only recently talked to after the speech, we've talked to a independent surveyor, part of RICS, and they're going to be coming to join us and affiliate with us in order to give people, through our data and through the data that we know, uh, give independent surveys for purchases. Something again not introduced in Iraq. There's no such thing as that in Iraq. So you're actually trying to change the behavior of Iraqis to bring that in Iraq, because for it to become an internationally standard agency and investor portal and investor model, you'll have to introduce these things as if you're doing it for the West and for Iraq. So we are moving into the investment portfolio as well. And the idea is to bring as much people as possible to Iraq. And I actually think over the course of 5 to 10 years before the big agencies start coming in. Hopefully, Bet Al Araqi will be that big agency, inshallah, over the course of time to be done. And it's looking exciting. That's the thing. There's a lot of exciting times ahead, and the central office being done is an exciting thing. And we're actually speaking to Regis, the office sharing company, to actually make part of you, because our central office is going to be on the top floor. The rest of the floors are actually going to be, most likely, we're going to introduce that system. It's already been done in Mansour, but we're actually going to trying to bring international companies into Iraq to set that up as well.
Fantastic. And Mehdi,
Yeah.
how can people reach you? Are you active on social media?
So yeah, well, I'm active on Instagram. If you search Bet Al Araqi on Instagram, it's there, and on LinkedIn, I'm available. We have so our central number, my number, is available as well. So generally, and hopefully, in 1 month time, the app will play the most important part, because the app will connect the Western world to Iraq, and the Iraqis to Iraq as well. So it becomes like ultimately the most important thing for us.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Mehdi, this has been a fantastic conversation, and I wish you all the best of luck in your new venture. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Hassan. And pleasure speaking to you.
All the best.